Alright, so this is going to be my 2025 NBA All-Star ballot. I'm going to go over who the actual All-Stars were and who I think should have been the All-Stars, who the biggest snubs were, and stuff like that. So getting started here with the Eastern Conference. So looking at this right now, Alright, looking at this, the actual All-Stars here were Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jason Tatum as the Eastern starters. Then you got Darius Garland, Cade Cunningham, Damian Lillard, Tyler Hero, Jaylen Brown, Evan Mobley, and Pascal Siakam were the bench players. And now for the snubs, people are talking about mostly Trae Young, Tyrese Maxey, Jarrett Allen, Josh Hart, Tyrese Halliburton, and Zach LaVine. And then in the top right here, we got some injured players here like LaMelo Ball, Franz Wagner, Paolo, Banchero, and Joel Embiid, who all would have had a solid case for an All-Star if they were not injured. But moving on from that, I'm going to give you my starting lineup here for the Eastern All-Stars, which I have Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Jason Tatum. So 100% match here with the real All-Stars. I think they got the Eastern starters all right, in my opinion. We go into the bench guys here. I got Cade Cunningham, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, who they have all three of these guys here, right? Then I got Zach LaVine actually, and then Pascal Siakam. So the main thing here, I got Zach LaVine as a forward here over Jaylen Brown. I think Zach LaVine's played better than Zach LaVine so far. He is on a worse team, and that's a big argument for Jaylen Brown. But I think Zach LaVine's been good enough, been good enough a player, been enough better than Zach LaVine, or he's been better enough than Jaylen Brown to kind of counteract the worse record that his team does have. So yeah, personally, I think Zach LaVine deserves a spot over Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown still has a spot here for the wild card. So looking into our last two wild card spots, right, they can go to any position. We have Damian Lillard, Tyler Hero, and Jaylen Brown, who are certainly three guys that could fill those last two spots, and then this whole list of snubs here. But in my opinion, I got Damian Lillard here. I think he's been good enough to certainly deserve an all-star spot here. And then I have Tyler Hero. So it's pretty much an exact match with the actual all-star roster, except the only real change I make is put Zach LaVine in over Jaylen Brown. That's very debatable, and I'm not mad that Jaylen Brown's in there, but I think Zach LaVine has been significantly better than Jaylen Brown this season and certainly deserves an all-star spot over him. So there's really not a whole lot of difference on the Eastern side, but when I get to the Western side, we're going to have quite a bit of differences going forward. So yeah, let's move on to the Western Conference. Some of these guys I just missed, in my opinion, Jaylen Brown, who again is on the actual team. Trae Young, Tyrese Maxey, and Tyrese Halliburton were certainly guys that I would you could argue over Tyler Hero or Damian Lillard. But yeah, moving on now to the Western Conference. The actual lineup is Stephen Curry, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, and LeBron James for the starters. And then the reserves are Anthony Edwards, James Harden, Victor Wembanyama, Jalen Williams, Alperen Sengun, and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Anthony Davis. So one thing to note here is that the two wildcard spots in the Western Conference are both forwards, while the two wildcard spots in the East were both guards. So very much forward heavy on the Western side and guard heavy on the Eastern side, as far as the actual all-star teams. But yeah, some of the biggest snubs here are Devin Booker, Kyrie Irving, De'Aaron Fox, Norman Powell, John Morant, and Domantas Sabonis. And then, again, some injured guys like Luka Doncic and basically the whole Pelicans roster with Zion, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum, who all, again, have been playing good enough to warrant at least some buzz to be an all-star if they would have played more games. So, starting off with my personal lineup, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, and Anthony Davis as the starters. So, personally, I think Anthony Edwards has been better than Stephen Curry this year by a good margin, and his team has a better record. So there's no real argument for Stephen Curry. The only reason he's above Anthony Edwards on the starters is because of name value. Although it doesn't necessarily matter who these starters are, because there's going to be 3 All-Star teams this year, so there's going to be 15 starters. So who gets voted a starter isn't necessarily going to be just because you're voted a you're just because you're not voted a starter. Sorry, just because like Anthony Edwards is not voted as a starter doesn't mean he won't be starting, because there's going to be 15 starters. So it doesn't really make a difference if you're a starter or a reserve. But I think Anthony Edwards certainly has been better than Stephen Curry, so he deserves the love of being voted a starter over Stephen Curry. And then Anthony Davis over LeBron James. I think most people would agree, right? They've been on the same team obviously all year. They've been, Anthony Davis just got traded, but he hasn't played a game for Dallas. Like, he's been on the same team as LeBron, so they have the same record, right? He's played better than LeBron James. I think anybody that looks at anything, watches Lakers games, LeBron James said it himself. Anthony Davis is the best player on this team, so I don't know why LeBron is an all-star starter over Anthony Davis. The only reason is because of name value. But yeah, going into the bench players here. So my two guards, I have James Harden and Devin Booker. So I actually have James Harden here. They have him on there. I have Devin Booker, who is a surprise name, because he was a snub. I have him making this over Stephen Curry. So Stephen Curry is voted a starter, right? He's currently going to be fighting for a wildcard spot on my roster. Devin Booker, I think, has been better than Stephen Curry. Look at the numbers. It's pretty close. And Devin Booker, again, has a better record than Stephen Curry. They might be the same record at this point, but they're very, very similar records at that. And Devin Booker, I think, had a slightly better season anyways. Then we got LeBron James, of course. I mean, he was voted a starter, but he's certainly an all-star in my opinion. Victor Wembanyama and Domantas Sabonis. So Wemby was on here, and Domantas Sabonis is another guy who was a snub in my opinion. I think he deserves a spot in here over any of these other forwards like Jalen Williams, Alperen Sengun, or Jaren Jackson Jr. So we have four players that made the All-Star team that I have not said yet. That being Stephen Curry, Jalen Williams, Alperen Sengun, and Jaren Jackson Jr. So those are going to be fighting for the last two wildcard spots on my team. The first one is going to go to Stephen Curry. I mean, yeah, he's certainly been good enough to be an all-star this year. He just is not been like a top 10 player, top 15. He's probably closer to the 20 to 25 player range in this season, which is kind of crazy to say, but he is like 36, 37 years old, so it does make sense. But he's still certainly an all-star in my opinion, just he kind of barely squeaks in here as one of the last wildcard spots. In the last spot, I'm going to give it to Jalen Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder. All of these players, Jalen Williams, Alperen Sengun, and Jaren Jackson Jr. have been playing great. They're all in the top three seeds in the Western Conference, but Jalen Williams does have the best record out of any of those guys, right? The Thunder are... you could definitely make the argument for any of these guys. Like, the Thunder are too good of a team to not have more than one All-Star. But again, the Rockets and Grizzlies are too good of a team to not have a single All-Star, which in my opinion, I don't think they deserve an All-Star at this point. But I'm not mad about the original All-Star list, but I definitely think Domantas Sabonis deserves a spot over all those forwards. The only reason he's not is probably because, like, I don't know, name value and record. Like, his record, they're like the 10 or 11 seed, while all these other guys are top 3 seeds. So that's really the only thing I can think of, because his stats are significantly better than any of those players, right? Any of those forwards here. And then again, like Devin Booker essentially is making this over one of those forwards as well. Technically, he's over Stephen Curry, but he's taking the spot over one of those other forwards, which again, he's had a worse record than those guys, but he has had a really good season, better statistical seasons than any of those guys, in my opinion. But yeah, looking at who just missed, again, it's going to be guys like De'Aaron Fox, and then Jaren Jackson, Kyrie Irving, Norman Powell, and Alperen Sengun. So yeah, Jaren Jackson, Alperen Sengun, obviously because they made the All-Star team. De'Aaron Fox was a pretty close guy for me. Kyrie Irving, Norman Powell were certainly considered there as well. But that is going to be it for the video. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out my NBA Power Ranking video if you have not. And I'm going to have another video coming out this week about the NBA trade deadline. So make sure to watch those, and goodbye.